Welcome to Martini Time. Beautiful afternoon here in Blackstone, Virginia, the center of the universe, but then you're also the center too. We're all the center of the universe. Just like our computers are the center, each computer is the center of the internet, each of us is the center of the universe. Anyway, let's talk. Let's talk about the statues of tyranny. Okay? That's hot in the news today. I think Trump, I didn't watch Trump, but the little copy across the bottom of his talk was, what? We're going to take down the statues of Washington next? So this is hot on Facebook. It's hot in the news. It's hot in the towns. It's hot in the cities. The statues are coming down, one by one. What's coming down? Why the anger? Why the demonstrations? I'm reminded, remember when the statue of Saddam came down in Baghdad? Of course, we pulled it down. They didn't pull it down. We pulled it down for them. And it created a civil war. But if the people pull down their own statue, if they vote to pull down their own statue, it's not like an invading army comes in and pulls it down. It's time. But let's talk about the South. I live here in Blackstone, a small town in Virginia, Southside Virginia. And my wife grew up here, grew up in this house, came here in 1981, got a job with the local paper and began writing about the town. But there's one thing about the Southside Virginia. These are small. Southside Virginia is about as conservative and rural as you can get. There's no colonial past here. It's all tobacco farming, small slave holding farms. They didn't have the big plantations that you had down from Richmond down to Norfolk along the James. These flat lands where they had huge plantations, grow cotton, had great big slaveholders, you see. So the slave holdings in Southside were small because it's kind of hilly. Farms were small, maybe 5, 10, 15. Go back in the records, you know. And the families that grew up here all grew out of the slaveholders and the slaves. Many of the black families here have the names of the slaves that owned, the masters that owned them. But if you go to every town, every town, every county has a courthouse. And every courthouse has a statue of a Civil War general. Or maybe just a Confederate soldier standing there with the rifle. And and this is in Nottoway, and on the big statue of the Confederate, so you have the names of the local white family, the sons of the local white families who died. And so every town has one of these. It's just part of the thing. There's a cannon there. And if you drive around the countryside, you will see occasionally a big Confederate battle flag flying over a little shacky house, not much. And even some might even have a cannon there. They're still expecting an attack. There's the expectation that the Yankees are going to come. So I'm ready, you see. And so, the Civil War reenactments, I used to photograph them back in the 90s. A friend of mine and I, we created a little business, put up a tent, and and he would sit out, he was a reenactor, he would sit out there in his general's uniform, and I had my computer and a white sheet in the tent, and so somebody would come in their uniform, I'd take a picture of them, and then transpose them into a Confederate scene, like maybe standing in front of a big house or something, so they had their Confederate picture composed or photoshopped onto a scene. And I got to watch these reenactments, and they're talk about serious business. You have fundamentalists and liberals in the reenactment, where the fundamentalists, everything down to the underwear, everything is pure Civil War. Then you have the liberals who might wear their old Hanes underwear, you know, a little more liberal, you see. But it's serious business, you know. And and every year they reenact different battles, and they follow the battles to the blueprint. And a great love here in Virginia is the study of Civil War. You go to the library and there's more books on that. And a lot of the historians make their name because they're Civil War historians. And Ken Wilber, not Wilbur, the documentary, Civil War documentary. So it's a great fascination. We love the Civil War. At least the white people do. So I guess the point is that I don't know what the point is, but I wanted to talk about this because there's a change happening. Something's going on. Something is. These statues were built not after the Civil War. They were built in the 20s. They were put up in the 20s during a time when there was a ramp of lynchings. I mean, in the 20s and 30s, that's when lynching started, and the birth of a nation. That racist picture of the Ku Klux Klan that Wilson showed in the White House. And you had the birth of the black stereotype, the Amos and Andy type. If you watch the movies, the black and white movies of the 20s and 30s, the only black people in there were maids and silly people. You know, in other words, yes, a boss, yes, you know, and the elevator man and the maid, you know, yes, a Mrs. So and so, yeah. Oh no, I don't know nothing about birthing babies, Miss Charlotte. You know, and right now, I mean, we have a good friends, a black couple that I've been taking pictures at Mount Nebo Church. I talked about that last week, going to Mount Nebo and having this great experience with learning about the black church, the sermons of the black church. And I've been taking pictures, and so we've known this couple for years, and yeah, Mr. Conley, Mrs. Conley, and I said, my wife said, look, Barbara, this Barbara, if you're gonna, you know, just call us Ed and Tilly, you know, instead of Miss Conley, you know, and it was very difficult. Kind of giggle, you know, it's, and they even now know, Mr. Ed. You see, the point is the conditioning of this layer cake here with the white layer on top and the black on beneath is layered into society. That's the layer, you know. So here in the South, white people expect to be called Mr. Conley and Mrs. Conley. And you expect to call the black person Bob or Jim or whatever. Whatever the name is, you know, but I'm Mr. Conley. It'd be a shock to be said, hey Ed, come on, what do you say, Ed? You know, a white person in the South. If a black person say, hey Ed, how you doing? It would upset the placemat. It would put a crack in the reality here. Whoa, you see. So it's very deep, this thing. It's very deep. It's the conditioning of the collective mind. So where individuals, if you're born in the South, you are implanted with race lenses. One's white and one's black. And you see the world in those, it's like you got wall eyes. You know, one eye sees black and one eye sees white. And it's kind of like they're layered. So white's above and black's below. And that's just the way you see everything. They're implanted. And it's very difficult to realize that you're wearing implants. It's kind of like science fiction, you know, where the aliens take somebody and implant something in you and you can't figure it out. Something is amiss, but you don't know what it is because your perception is slanted. Your perception has been tampered with. So our perception has been tampered with from history. And the problem is that everybody you know sees that way. Everybody sees the same way. So that your group, your family, your church, your politics, all holds the place. All holds it in place. Who are you to go against that, see? If you go against that, you go against your identity. You go against your family, your region, your people, your reality. You go against your reality. Who are you to go against that, you see? How can you swim against that? You see, how can you, the gravitational pull of this is so powerful. Very few people can transcend it. That's why other people that come to Blackstone from other parts of the country, the north or whatever, what the fuck's going on here? You see, they feel like aliens. They just don't, so they don't really speak out because, I mean, if you write something in the newspaper that speaks, like I've done it, if you write something in the newspaper that has my point of view, a ton of people will come down on you and stone you to death with words. Not to mention on Facebook, I do it all the time. See, I have a lot of bruises. I'm stoned all the time. Maybe it's the gin. But the point is that these statues are not just stone statues. These are gods. Go back to ancient Rome, ancient Greece. Statues were gods. Napoleon, Saddam Hussein. It's gods, you see. Of course, the Christian would call them false idols. Yet they put up the same statues. See. But it's a god, a collective god. These statues hold the Old South together. These statues are the center pole that holds the Old South together, the myth of the Old South, the romance of the Old South. This is a romantic age, the Old South. Gone with the Wind. Look at the parallel between Rex Butler and Charlotte O'Hara and all the soldiers that went to their death in the Civil War with red scarves and valiant, handsome uniforms and sabers, riding a horse into battle. And they met the fuselage of the industrial age. They just got mowed down. Death became impersonal, a machine death. And the same thing happened in World War I. And the same thing happened in Germany, when Germany invaded Poland, and the Polish army was on horses with sabers going against tanks. So this is a romance of the heroic individual against the redcoats, against the machine, against the PC man, Apple, Steve Jobs. The Apple man was a romantic figure. You see, I'm jumping around, but I'm connecting dots. When that advertisement came out in the Super Bowl in 1984, and you had the great screen of the PC man, the IBM man, who is the conformity, the machine, the modern age, and the individual runs down and throws the torch through the screen and breaks it up, you see. The Apple man was here, the heroic hero, the romance. It's all mythology. But the point is that the South, the Old South, is a romantic age of heroic. And there's nothing more heroic than having a lost cause and going to war even though you know you lose. That's romance, you see. That's romantic. The lost cause. Even though I know it's no use, I fight, you see. That's the stuff movies are made out of. That's that's the individual, the heroic individual. So the romance of the South is about the heroic individual who takes a stand against authority, against the machine, against the redcoats. Braveheart, the romance of Braveheart. Remember that in Mel Gibson movie? Taking a stand, all you got on is kilts and a bow and a sword, or a knife, and you go against the regiments of the redcoats, and you turn around and give them the moon. That's romantic. You see, so this whole idea of the South is romance, and here these statues are romantic heroes, these generals who fought off the invading Yankees, the machine people, the stormtroopers in Star Wars. You see, the rebels fought off the stormtroopers. It's all movie. It's romance. It's beautiful. It's a great story. But when the story becomes reality, now you got a conflict. Now you got a dissonance between the story of romance and the actual reality of where we're living today. What's more unreal than having a parade of Nazi saluters? And now I call it the NCP. I just made it up. Nazis, Confederates, and Patriots. I saw a picture of 3 flags all together. A Nazi flag, a Confederate flag, and an American flag. It's all one now. 3, they've merged. Who are they fighting against? They're fighting a movie. They're in a video game. They're in a movie. A romantic movie of the heroic last stand. You see. What does that do? It gives you a sense of heroic. It gives the members of this, the participants of this video game, the feeling of being a hero, the feeling of having purpose, the feeling of having meaning, something to die for, something to spill your blood for. When you spill blood, that makes it real. Other than that, it's just a game. But when you spill blood, whoa, this is real shit now. Blood on the soil, they chanted. Blood on the soil. Yeah, they wanted their blood on the soil. That makes the sacrifice. It's sacrificial. Romance is a sacrificial myth. The romantic lovers die for their love. That's romance. Love and death is one. The heroic individual dies for his cause, becomes a martyr. ISIS is all romance. ISIS is a romantic myth for Islam. And we're the stormtroopers. So we have our own ISIS. Call it alt, right, National Socialism, white supremacism. I don't care what you call it. It's romantic, and it's mythology, and it's movie time. We have been brought up now. Even I'm 80, and I grew up I was a little kid in the 40s, and I grew up going to watch black and white Tom Mix and Roy Rogers. They were my mythology, my moral story. We like wrestling. Wrestling is mythology. Wrestling is the romance of good versus evil. Trump is a mythologist, is a romantic of good versus evil. He sees the world in the terms of this romance of the good fighting the evil. That's why the alt-right likes him. He's a mythic man. The romance of the hero who fights against all odds. Gives everybody the finger. You see, the heroic individual. And that's being born out of the modern age in which individuality tends to get lost in industrial work. We're more and more, we're living in a digital world where you can be an individual on the internet, but in real life, you're just a nobody. You get a profile, invent yourself on the internet. It can be anybody on the internet, but in real life, you just 9 to 5, you're a waiter, truck driver. See, just punching the clock. Boring. See, no meaning in that. Punch a clock, do the job for 40 years, and then you spend a few years watching TV, and then you die. Is that it? What's the meaning in that? You see? It's a search for meaning. So all this rise up now, see, scientific materialism destroys meaning. It tells you how to do stuff. It's great at making stuff and all that, but it doesn't give you any purpose or meaning. It's just, reality is just a bunch of stuff. You see, there's no heroic consciousness or intention in it, you see. There's no subjective in it. It's all objective, you see. So this is a revolt against the modern objectification of reality. And it's a revolt that feels real because there's blood. So when you get a mass shooter, or that crazy kid that shot up the black church in Charleston, you see, he felt he was a martyr for the cause. He thought he was going to trigger a race war, the Armageddon, the rapture. You see, it's all mythology. So these statues are mythic figures. And they're a mythic, and they are a reference to a bygone age. It's like the climate has changed. The climate of the Old South is not the climate we're living in now. The climate is different. And when you try to mix a reality we're mixing the unreal with the real. We're trying to impose an unreal mythology or story of our lives onto a real reality, you know. As boring as that is, it's what is, you see. So when you look at this Charlottesville, it's a good thing this happened because it really puts it in a shadow. It throws a shadow of this on the screen so you can see the outline of it. The absurdity of having a Nazi army, which is what that was, a Nazi army in Charlottesville, the home of Thomas Jefferson and the Enlightenment, the American Enlightenment. That's what Charlottesville is a symbol of. Jefferson is the symbol of the American Enlightenment and equality and inclusion and the Renaissance man that includes all knowledge. The inclusion. Now you can go, well, he had slaves. Well, you can go ahead. That's the problem right now, is that we destroy the meaning of what's going on by saying everybody did it. Everybody's guilty. Everybody's equal. That's not true. Everything isn't equal. Some things have more value than other things. Everything is not the same value. That's what the revolt is about. The revolt is about this tendency to give everything equivalence. All points of view are the same. All opinions are the same. Well, that's true on a spiritual level, but it's not true on a ground level. You see. So we get confused between spiritual truths and practical truths. It's not practical that all views are the same, that all views get equal time. So why not give an insane person the same amount of time as you give a philosopher? You see the point? You can't do that. It's not practical. It's dysfunctional. So truth is what's functional. Truth is what works. And if something isn't working, then we're missing the truth. It's very easy when you look at it that way. So these Nazi marches are dysfunctional. See. Anyway, so we're in this big thing now where we're pull down the statues and pull them down and people stomping on them like they stomped on Saddam. The end of tyranny. Well, it is the end of a tyranny of a mythology that has held us in a trance for hundreds of years. 250 years of slavery and 100 and some years since the end of the Civil War. This is the American original sin. This is the American mythology. This romance. America is a romantic nation. Daniel Boone, Lewis and Clark, the Alamo. That's all romantic myths. The hero, savior who comes in from the West and restores order. Shane, John Wayne, Dirty Harry, the Western hero, the mythic hero, the romantic hero. We love it. We're a romantic country. But when we make our romance into politics, and we make our romantic myths into marches that kill people, we're in a deluded state. We're falling in love with our mythology and we think it's real. We're living in a video game. We think we're living in TV. Everything, oh, atomic war, haha, that's fun. It'll be great viewing. We'll watch that on TV. Wow, far out, man. It's like we've detached and we've become a viewer on a couch with a beer, and reality is on a screen. And if it's entertaining, it's great. And entertaining means there's blood on the soil. You don't watch a wrestling match where nobody gets hurt. You don't go to a NASCAR if there were no wrecks. We watch sports so there's an injury, so somebody gets real. Oh my God, it's real. You see. So anyway, we're in a funny place in our world. We have a culture, I'm talking along, but what the hell. We have a culture that removes risk. If there's any risk at all, a new law comes in to fix it. So we have a culture that is intentionally driven to remove death and risk. But without risk and death, there's no hero. So we have to create the hero to balance out with a culture that removes death and makes everything flat and safe, you see. Everything is flat and safe. You don't get to risk anything. You've got to wear a helmet. Automatically, everything makes it safe for you. The car buttons up, everything comes on. Remember those stupid seat belts that when you sat in the car, it put it on you? That didn't last. But the whole idea of the culture, the technology, is we desire security. We want to be free from death. We want to be free from risk. I don't want to die. And then we have the hero myth. I want to die. I want to die. I want to risk death. I want to climb to the top of this mountain with my bare hands. You see, I want to risk death. So we either do it in a movie, ooh, it's pretend death, or we do it in reality. But it's all a reaction to a culture that removes death. Somebody dies, they're whisked away. If a machine hurts you, you sue the company and they fix it. Right? So there's a lot of layers going on here. I know I've rambled, and I guess to get back to the primary point was that when the statues come down, what's really coming down is the tyranny of a mythology that tries to apply a romantic past to a present reality. And that only creates discord, confusion, conflict, and inability to progress and solve problems. So anyway, thanks for dropping in.